Welcome to episode 50, everyone. 50 episodes. And this one's called How Not to Be a LinkedIn Loser. Now, LinkedIn has become a lifeline for anyone involved in new business. It's become the de facto showcase for our quarantine selves and an essential new business tool. And in this show, we're going to show you how to use it properly. In the agency world, thought pieces, vlogs, podcasts, live streams, and webinars take place in such vast volumes that it's impossible to catch them all. One of the overriding themes of all our recent podcasts has been the fact that in order to foster and maintain good, socially distanced relationships, you need to deploy all sorts of techniques to make sure you're being useful to your connections and your community. And these days, it means developing the art of social media. Now, I'm going to say right out of the box, we are, most of us, pretty bad at social media, and I'm not excluding myself when I say that we think that the mere fact that we've broadcast something to our network, that it gets read, interpreted, and deserves a response. You think we'd learned our lesson from email, and that just because you've sent it doesn't mean it's been read. So this week, I'm on a quest to find out how to make sure we all get the best out of LinkedIn, even the free version. And in doing so, I'm going to take one for the team. I'm going to expose myself for the cause and lay bare my LinkedIn profile and activity and have it examined by an expert. And when I say expert, I mean expert. You know how you all love the little hints and tricks of how to optimize your LinkedIn activity, but you just don't have the time? Well, this is the man who's done all the hard work for you. John Aspirian labels himself as relentlessly helpful. He's a professional member of the Chartered Institute of Editing and Proofreading, a technical author for Sky TV. He's a speaker, mentor, published author of the book Content DNA, and he's a copywriter. He also has a bachelor's degree in maths and computer science. And I've now discovered he's quite a healthy chef and food blogger. So welcome to the Fuel Podcast, John Aspirian.
Nice one, Keith. Thank you for having me. That was a great intro, and I'm really looking forward to getting stuck in. So let's do it. We've got loads to talk about, I think.
Hey, guess what, John?
Go for it.
It's Friday.
I know. I love it.
I saw your T-shirt thing. That's fantastic.
Lovely. That's going to be dropping soon. Yeah, I've got this Friday Shout Club. For the last 2 years, I've been promoting people on LinkedIn, and I've called it Friday Shout, and now I'm getting my own branded shirts and just trying to make something of it. Yeah.
They look very good, very good. But just winding back a little bit, I was fascinated reading your journey to health, and for which many congratulations. It's an inspiring tale, and I have nicked a couple of recipes from you. The cauliflower and broccoli cheese with sriracha, and the chili pesto chicken look delicious.
Fantastic! I'm very, very glad to hear it. Yeah. So I had a kind of change of life circumstances, and I thought, you know what, it's finally time. While everyone else is gaining weight in lockdown, I thought, why don't I just start exercising a bit and maybe cutting out all the KFC and all that stuff? You know, other fried chicken providers are available. And you take care of myself a bit more. And so been walking 5 miles every morning, and I've come up with a few recipes of my own, and it's working out really well. So I've lost almost 4 stone right now since the end of July. So
amazing.
Still a bit of way to go, but it's going well. Thank you.
And you're quite the food photographer and blogger as well. I mean, it's another little skill you've developed there.
Yeah, well, I think I might have a bit of competition on that score, but I just thought, why not write about my experience? Because it's all about personal stories, isn't it? So some people are interested in that, and took a few snaps along the way, and that article that you're referring to has been really well received.
Yes, I can see. So have you developed any other skills over the last year apart from cooking?
Domestic mostly, washing clothes and just kind of taking care of myself. In general, domestically. So yeah, nothing earth-shattering, but I'm able to do all of the basics.
Fantastic. And I've got to ask you, have you got Bitmoji on there? Is he there?
He's on my shirt. He's on my shirt right now.
There he is. Hello, Bitmoji, John.
Yeah, that's me. That's me. I've got everything branded with him as much as possible. But do you know what? I couldn't actually put him in my book, Content DNA, because of a licensing issue. I did ask the makers of Bitmoji whether I could, and they said no. And I said, oh, I'll even pay you. No, wasn't having it. So actually, it means I just need to be a bit more conscious about how much I use him, because I can't use him in truly commercial things. But there we go.
Are we okay to mention him here?
we are okay to mention him here, and I use him in all of my social media posts. So he's a kind of popular cartoon character. I always say he's like the younger, slimmer version of me. Although I don't know, maybe I'm catching him up a bit.
All right. Okay. So on to business. But so when you started out, you said that you probably were like most of us that are on LinkedIn, still are, that basically, I mean, you had little or no brand identity, few referrals, few leads. And so what we're here to do is you're going to help pass on a few tips about how we can all up our game on LinkedIn. I mean, essentially, is LinkedIn now strong enough as a platform for us to pin all our kind of business hopes on?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's certainly the most valuable social media platform to be on, in my opinion, because it works for B2B, it works for B2C. Essentially, anyone who's got a product or service to promote, it's a great place to have business conversations. So I think it's
Right.
fantastic. If your question is it somewhere to pin all of our business hopes on? That's probably a dangerous play, because at the end of the day, you're on rented land, you're on Microsoft's territory, and what would happen if that were all to shut down tomorrow? I mean, it's very unlikely, but if you don't have a corner of the internet that you can truly call your own, then you're playing a risky game. So all of your hopes, no. Most of your social media based endeavors, yes, certainly.
Great stuff. And you specialize in on the LinkedIn platform, obviously, not just in general social media,
Yeah,
but
that's right. Because I mean, I spent years in the wilderness, I suppose, just saying, oh, Twitter's around, let me start that. Snapchat's around, Instagram's around, Facebook's around. Let's just create presences everywhere.
right.
And actually, that's not sustainable for the individual entrepreneur. I always say it's better to go narrow and deep rather than broad and shallow. And I did a post about this not that long ago on LinkedIn, and I said, you pick your place and you cause havoc there. And that's by far the most effective way of building a memorable presence, is to do it in one place, because it's easier to remember and refer to others, instead of having a kind of so presence in lots of places. No one's going to remember that.
Don't spread yourself too thin.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. And so, I mean, how do you rate the other sort of social media platforms for business sort of purposes? I mean, you've obviously done quite a bit of exploration on this. I mean, is Twitter any good for business to business stuff?
Right. So the honest answer for Twitter for me is that I've never had a single piece of business that I can relate back to having come from Twitter.
Fair.
Okay, that's point one. But the great thing about having a secondary social media presence is that it gives you an opportunity to do some social listening, which is really powerful. We all talk about, listen to your customer. Well, do that. If you can't speak to them face to face, and no one can speak to people face to face right now, you can at least listen to conversations. So Twitter's great for that. And because I don't have a massive following there, it's a good way of testing some ideas without having many chips on the table. Like, if this idea flops, so what? If it starts to get some interesting responses, maybe I can scale that up. So I kind of see it the same way as, when American TV networks test shows in the UK, because the UK has got a much smaller audience, and they can see, oh, that seems to be getting good responses. Let's scale it up to America now. Right. It's that kind of idea. So if I test ideas on Twitter and get something like a decent response, I know that that's probably going to play well on LinkedIn. So that's another strand to it. And the other good thing about Twitter is Twitter's got really cool, deep search features that let you dig out stuff that you can't necessarily see on LinkedIn. So I spend on social media about 90% of my time on LinkedIn. The other 10% is for sort of dabbling on Twitter. So it doesn't generate leads as such, but it still fulfills a useful kind of business purpose. But two is pretty much all I'd limit it to. I mean, I've registered on the other platforms only for the purpose of avoiding cyber squatting, someone hijacking my name.
I get you.
That's about it, really.
So, I mean, the sort of Instagrams and all that lot. I mean, you're kind of you don't really rate them, though.
Well, look, I can only talk about what works for me. And in my business, which is explaining how stuff works, when we boil it down to brass, that's what I do, right? I explain how stuff works for B2B mostly. Instagram, I'm not going to really do loads of visual content that explains how stuff works there. My ideal clients are not there. So why should I waste my time dabbling on Instagram and sharing selfies and stuff like that? You do a little bit of it, but that's hobbyist stuff for me. It's not relevant to my business. So why bother spending time doing that?
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. Okay, well, look, what we're going to do, we're going to pull back the focus a little bit and we'll set the scene. So you've got a new version of your LinkedIn learning course coming out, and that's called Playbook, right?
Yeah, so what I'm doing is I'm expanding my LinkedIn online course and rebranding it to the LinkedIn Leaders Playbook. And so I know you've had a look at some of my content, but really what I want to do is go deeper on this and become a bit more expansive. So it covers lots of different areas. And hopefully we'll give people a one-stop shop of learning how this place works quite quickly so that they can avoid the common mistakes and approach LinkedIn in a better, more educated way.
And I've got to say, John, that it certainly, I mean, what I saw of the course as well, it certainly opened my eyes in terms of what I'm not doing right or what I need to improve with and improve on. So, and I know that a lot of people who listen to the show and who sort of are in my circle on LinkedIn are obviously seem to be falling short as well. But I mean, we don't want to give away all the juicy bits. But you kindly agreed that you were going to sort of come on and share quite a few hints and tips about how people can optimize their LinkedIn presence. So let's address a few things first. I mean, just the basic stuff. Just a quick description of the course, how much it costs, and what do you get for it?
Okay, so the new version of the course is going to have modules that cover tactics, so do's and don'ts on LinkedIn. It's going to cover how to set up your profile and some tips for looking at stats on your profile and some best practices. It's going to show you how to search LinkedIn properly. And bear in mind, by the way, that I have a free LinkedIn account. I'm not paying for the LinkedIn Premium Gold.
Incredible. That was the first shock.
Yeah, it's going to show you how to connect properly with people, because a lot of people get that bit wrong. It's got a section on company pages, because when I do webinars, that's always one of the most popular questions. It's all right, but we want to build a company page presence. Okay, so I've covered that. There's a really chunky section about content creation, because that's really my strong suit. And then engagement, which is the people reacting to your stuff and how to manage all of that. And finally, there's a module that is about what I call advanced or secret stuff that most people just would never discover, that I have discovered from having spent 4 years pretty much living on this platform and trying to understand how it works. So that's all of what's covered. The retail price, we're going to be looking at 250 quid for this, and it gives you lifetime access to the course. And at the moment, I'm planning some extra bonus stuff that the people who get the course will get as well. I don't want to say too much about that right now because I want to formulate my plan, but that is the expanded version of the course. And I've got quite a lot of confidence that this is going to deliver more than the value on the ticket.
Good, excellent. Well, I mean, I have to say, I think it's great value. But I mean, the course itself, I mean, from what I understand, you can, I mean, if you sign up to it and stuff, you actually get to download that and have it sort of to refer back to all the time.
Yeah, it's lifetime access to all of that content. So yes,
perfect.
Yeah. And also, depending on when this episode goes out, if anyone should buy the current iteration of the course, they'll automatically get the new version free forever. So there needn't be any need to kind of wait to get the new shiny singing dancing version of it.
Well, just just to let you know, we are going to rush this one out because it's an important one as far as we're concerned in terms of making sure that everybody makes the best of their LinkedIn presence. Okay, so we're going to go through. I mean, you know, the sort of the main headlines of the course, which are tactics, profiles, and sort of contents and stuff like that. But content, sorry. But okay, so tactics. Now, one of the standout points for me when I was watching it was that it can actually be quite damaging to our visibility and to our profile or whatever if all the same people that are in our kind of community or tribe, as Ian Farrar, recent guest of ours, described them. If that community is always commenting on our posts, so that can actually be quite damaging. So how's that work?
Well, it can if you're in some kind of arrangement where people quickly hop on, the same group of people quickly hop onto your post, because LinkedIn can tell from that you know that content hasn't had enough time to spread organically through the network. And yet if the same 7 people always like and comment within, you know, minutes of a post going live, that is probably a signifier that there's been some kind of private agreement that people would do, you know, a kind of circular like, comment, share arrangement, which is what we call an engagement pod. And engagement pods really are an example of gaming the algorithm, and that's against the user agreement. So LinkedIn doesn't like that. But actually, from a human side of things as well, if it were those people doing that all the time, the kind of content that tends to find itself in engagement pods tends not to be that relevant to the followers of each individual person. So let's say I'm in an engagement pod with a builder and a logo designer and someone who works in financial services. Well, if I'm in an agreement to go and like and comment their stuff immediately as they post it, that some of my followers are going to see that, and they're not following me to see stuff about building or logo design or financial services. They're following me to see stuff about copywriting and LinkedIn. So what I'm doing is I'm referring irrelevant content into the feeds of my followers, which means that they'll unfollow me. And everyone in this kind of unholy agreement is essentially doing that to their followership. So you really need to stay on topic. And you can't do that in most engagement pods. So I think there's algorithmic reasons why it's a bad idea, and there's kind of social reasons why it's a bad idea. Long story short, don't be in an engagement pod.
Right. And I mean, there's another example of an engagement pod that I've noticed as well, is when you get people who all work in the same company, and you've got somebody that's kind of a bit of a spokesperson for the business. And then as soon as they put something out, everybody then chimes in and says, great post, you know, and all this sort of stuff and the usual thing. So you class that as an engagement pod as well, would you?
Well, I suppose it is really. And that just gets boring very, very quickly, because everyone's singing from the same hymn sheet. The comments really have no variance in them. They're all very short, very supportive, and that doesn't really add anything of value to the discussion. What actually adds value is meaty comments. Because comments are the best accelerant for visibility on LinkedIn. So if you write a substantive comment on someone's post, what that says to LinkedIn is the amount of time being poured into this post is going up. Let's spread this to other people. Okay. So if you think about it in terms of how much time is being dedicated to the post, it doesn't take any time to click like. It doesn't take any time to click share. It doesn't take much time to go, great post. But it takes time to write 3 paragraphs where you dissect what the person has written and put in something really substantive that adds to the discussion. That, because LinkedIn doesn't have any sense of the quality of what's going on. Right. So it uses the comment length as a proxy for quality, because who's going to sit there and write 3 paragraphs of complete gibberish? Not many people. And so it'll go, oh, lots of people are saying lots of stuff on this. Of substance, let's push it out to the next level of people and accelerate the reach. So deep comments, thick comments are really valuable for the algorithm, and people in engagement pods never do that, because they've got, oh, I've got to go and comment on these 17 posts now.
Right.
Great post, great post, great post, great post. I'm done. See you later. That's no good.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's a very good point, because that goes on a lot, doesn't it? The just people just saying, like, and then that's kind of, they've done their thing and they move on. So that's quite an interesting point. Now, when I first joined LinkedIn, I started out, I did what probably everybody does, which, I looked up Richard Branson, Robert Herjavec, Peter Jones, Theo Paphitis, tried to get noticed, that kind of way. But is there a subtle art to kind of following people on LinkedIn? I mean, is there a sort of, is it good to try and pick and choose carefully?
In terms of following people, I think you can follow anyone you want, and you can follow as many people as you want, and go for it, I say, because you can then very quickly decide based on what's in your feed. Yeah, that guy's not really appealing to me, or that woman speaks a lot of sense. I'm going to try and connect with her. So there's no issue with following lots of people, but the problem is that a lot of people just jump straight to trying to connect with people, which is a different game altogether. Because when you try and connect with someone, you're faced with the question, do you want to send this person an invitation note? And moreover, they're faced with, you've received an invitation from Keith. He may or may not have sent a note. Do you want to accept him into your network? And there's a time burden on both sides. And if you go and try and connect with lots of irrelevant people, that's not good for your network. You're wasting other people's time. And if you haven't shown that you've known what the other person is about, they might just ignore you, and then essentially the door's closed forever. So a better way of doing it is to say, okay, this is a high value target to me. I'm going to go and follow them for a couple of weeks, get to know all about them, read their profile, read their content, comment on their content. And then I'm going to make a really targeted, personalized approach that shows that this is just for them and could never have been sent to anyone else. And those invitations are much more likely to be accepted than not. And therefore you get that high value person into your network.
Great stuff. Okay, well that's good advice as well. So at least we didn't go too far wrong there. But on the other side of things, when I did sign up, and I think it was 10 years ago, I can't remember now. But anyway, when I did sign up, I took advantage of its very handy, and it tries to talk you into this. The handy grow your connections by sending invitations to all your email contact service, which I did, much to the chagrin of a lot of my contacts. And I mean, obviously, playing the numbers game is a bit of a blunt instrument, and I'm not sure it did me a whole lot of good. But I mean, should I now kind of go back through those connections, that even the ones that said yes, and sort of prune them? And if so, how should I do that?
Okay, well, I would say in the first instance, it's probably better to go and look at the number of people that you're following, and to unfollow those people who are not adding any value to your LinkedIn feed. So if you go to linkedin.com/feed/following, that shows a grid of all of the people you're following, ordered by the people who have posted most often this week. Okay, now that screen has got a one-click unfollow button for every single person. So it's a very, very quick to go, oh, I don't, never hear from him, never hear from her. He posts a load of rubbish, unfollow, unfollow, unfollow. And that way you're not breaking the connection with them. So in other words, if you're already connected, you can still message them, and they'll still see your stuff. You just won't see theirs. Right. So actually it's a smarter play to unfollow people. I tend to disconnect with people, which is a little bit more involved. You go to their profile and you click more and you say disconnect. So there's a few more clicks involved per person. But I tend to do that only if I've got a kind of, if I've made a value judgment somewhere that I really don't want to be associated with this person, then I would remove them. And the only other time where it would be necessary is if your network goes so large that you approach the network limit, which is 30,000 on LinkedIn. Then you might want to say, okay, I need to remove some people so I can add some more people. But I'm nowhere near that, despite being very active for 4 years. So I would recommend the one-click unfollow method, and you can get rid of lots of people in your network from following them in your network. And I don't actually follow that many people. It means that my LinkedIn feed is nice and clean. So every time I go to the home feed, I know that the people whose content I'm going to see are people I've chosen to be there, as opposed to they just happen to be people I'm connected with and they're spouting any old rubbish.
Good. That's a good advice there. Thank you very much. Now, because obviously, LinkedIn kind of, I'm not sure whether it's designed to do this or not, but I think it encourages you to try and up your numbers of connections all the time, because it quite prominently displays that number of connections figure to absolutely everybody. And I mean, is that a bit of a misnomer? I mean, is that misleading for it to be doing that?
Well, LinkedIn displays your follower count publicly. It doesn't display your connection count publicly. So if you've got fewer than 500 connections, it will say how many you've got. If you've got more than 500 connections, it will say 500 plus. But on your profile, it will say the number of followers you've got, which very often correlates very closely to the actual number of connections. So essentially what you're saying is correct.
Right.
But LinkedIn themselves, until recently, used to say, don't connect with people you don't know, which, if you think about it, is probably the most stupid advice you could ever give on a networking platform. Because otherwise, you're just in your echo chamber forever with your mates from school.
Yeah.
So that doesn't make any sense, but they have removed that guidance now. But I don't recommend making loads and loads of connections. I mean, some trainers would say, go and build a big network, because it means that you can see deeper into the LinkedIn network and it makes you look more authoritative if you've got 5,000 connections rather than 5. But truthfully, if you've got the right 5 connections, you might earn more money than that person who's just gone connect, right? So I wouldn't rush. And what I do is I build slowly, and I try to get to know each person in my network. And that means, we can have conversations. You actually would save me from a burning building if it were the case, because you actually recognize me. You know my voice, you know my face, and you know something about me, and I know something about you.
That's great. And so I mean, quality, not quantity, really.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you can do both, brilliant. But it means you're going to be at your desk a lot of the time, because that's another common question. How long should I spend on LinkedIn? And truthfully, I probably say to new people who are trying to get established that you probably need to spend a few hours there a week. It's not just, it's not something you can do for 10 minutes and then forget about. You need to put in a bit of effort to make it work. But if you really want to grow, you're going to spend a lot of time there, and that a lot of people can't justify that in their business. So that's totally understandable.
Yeah, of course it is. But I think even more so now we're kind of forced into this method of working from home now, that LinkedIn has become, as I said right at the top of the show, LinkedIn has become a vital umbilical cord for a lot of us, and investing some time into that. Into the platform, I think is probably going to pay dividends in the long run. But so under the chatting and socializing sort of category, I see you did an experiment, a test recently, whether it made any difference if you kind of lined up all your content, the stuff that you were going to release and automated it over a period. And how did that all work out? What conclusions did you come to?
Yeah, so the final conclusion to that is that scheduling tools aren't great for all types of content on LinkedIn, but for the content that you do share from a scheduling tool to LinkedIn, that content has just as much chance of getting likes, comments, shares, engagement, visibility, as if you were on the platform posting it manually at the time. So that's the key takeaway, is that scheduling posts is okay and is not subject to any kind of algorithmic penalty. It's not like LinkedIn saying, oh, you weren't here to do it yourself, you used a tool to send that message, we're going to penalize you. No, that does not happen. It potentially happened in the past. It is not happening in 2021. That is not happening. So that's the key insight. So if you've got text posts or image posts that you want to share on LinkedIn, you can schedule them. But keep in mind, please, that reacting to people's responses to your content is really important. So if someone leaves you a comment and you've gone off because, well, I scheduled it, so forget about it, That's not going to work. You've got to respect people's time. If they give you your time, you give it to them back. So you need to be around to respond to comments, but the actual scheduling is not subject to penalty.
That's a great point, because you know the amount of times that, I mean, I've actually got sort of rewarded for you know, commenting on people's sort of posts and stuff, and when, you know, when I feel that they are reading my responses to something that they've said, and they immediately come back with a, you know, a retort on that, I think, you know, then you're actually halfway to an engagement. And I think that's quite an interesting interesting point, is that, you know, obviously when you schedule stuff, that you know, it's a good idea to just to keep an eye on things for comments and be ready to follow up with those.
Yeah, totally. I mean, you know, unless you're a celebrity, you've got to give back. Like, there's no point in me commenting on Richard Branson's posts,
No.
because basically a million other people have done
Yeah.
it before me, and I'm never going to get a response. So why should I bother? There's no point. And in a small scale, if I comment on your post and you never respond to me, I'm going to give up pretty quickly and just move on to someone who actually wants to have a dialogue. So
Yeah.
so just keep that in mind. Don't give others that feeling.
Yeah, lovely. And I mean, in a similar vein, the lovely bragging posts that we've all seen, and hopefully, I don't think I've written one. I don't know. I haven't had much to brag about recently, but I love the way that you know, when people respond, you know, and they pile on with comments like, you know, oh, that must be great for you. You must feel so superior and stuff. But something that you said to me the other day that I thought, oh my God, it's not even worth doing that. When people comment on some of those braggadocious posts and stuff, you saying that actually helps the article. Is that right?
Well, it does. That's the thing. You see, like I said earlier, comments are the best accelerant of visibility on LinkedIn. So if you comment on a post, and actually there's a bit of moral panic around this, because let's say you see something objectionable on LinkedIn.
Right.
Now, part of you wants to comment on that to say, I totally disagree with this, and how could you possibly say that? But the other part of you might realize that by very virtue of you commenting, you'll spread that message to other people. And worse than that, the other people will just see that thing in their feed, and then they'll see John Espirian commented on this, and they'll see the objectionable thing, and they might think, oh, John's associating himself with that. Does he believe that? Oh, I'm going to unfollow him. So actually, even if you disagree with something, you might accidentally be associated with it. So that's terrible, right? And you're giving more oxygen of publicity to the person who's putting the silly thing in there. So the way I've flipped that around recently, because occasionally, believe it or not, some people disagree with some of the stuff I say. And one person recently commented with, it wasn't quite trolling, but it was certainly quite unkind. And you've got to try and kill those people with kindness. So I responded to him and said, thank you. By commenting on my content, you've helped it spread further. Thank you very much, which I'm sure really annoyed him even further. But, you know, so just bear in mind what you comment on. This is a very important point, and I'm going to talk about this actually in my next book, the idea of the extended content footprint, right? When you comment on stuff, you're not creating content, but you are adding stuff into the feeds of the people who follow you, and the things that you comment on and the people whose posts you comment on says something about you. So if you comment on the wrong stuff, or you say the wrong stuff, especially on LinkedIn, that can have really bad consequences for the way people perceive you. It's not just about the content that you put out.
Right.
It's the content you refer into the feeds of the people who follow you. That is your extended content footprint. Be very careful of what you refer into the feeds of others.
And so you're effectively, you know, pouring gasoline onto a fire anyway. I mean, just by the sheer dint of commenting on it.
Yeah, absolutely. So just be very mindful of where you engage and where you withhold.
Fantastic. So the best advice, I mean, if you get a troll responding to something, just don't rise to it.
Well, certainly don't rise to the bait, but absolutely thank them for helping to spread the visibility of your content, because that'll really get under their skin properly. And yeah, there you go.
Well, at the start of the year, we did a fantastic interview with Mei King Sang, the social media maven, and
Yes.
she used a term that I've never heard before, and now it came up again when I was sort of doing research into. I was listening to your show as well, lurkers,
Mm,
and when I was in that presentation, this term lurkers came about,
yeah.
and how do you categorize the three? You've got lurkers, contributors, and creators. Is that right on LinkedIn?
That's right. Actually, in Content DNA, because I like alliteration, I've called them the consumer category, but more commonly, I actually refer to them as lurkers. They're the people who are sitting there watching, consuming your stuff, but they never interact. They never engage publicly. Okay.
Right.
And in the book, I make an analogy with an art museum, an art gallery, where there's a load of people behind the velvet rope who are looking at the Da Vinci on the wall, right?
Right.
But essentially they're faceless. You know, no one goes to an art museum to see who else is in the art museum. They're going to see the art. So the consumers, they never really do anything. They're behind the velvet rope. And then in the middle, you've got these contributors who are the equivalent on LinkedIn of the people who like and comment and share and tell people about stuff.
They're
And
the
in the art gallery, they're the people who fix up the paintings and make the lights work and make sure the doors are open and stuff like that. They're the people who run the machine of the thing.
right.
And then there are the Da Vincis who are actually on the wall getting all the credit. They're the creators. And only 1% of people on LinkedIn are creators. So actually, you know, if one of your questions is, how do I stand out on LinkedIn? Create stuff, because that puts you into the top 1% straight away. But most people, about 90%, are in the lurker or consumer category. They just look. And this is a really important thing to understand, because when people say to me, oh, no one's looking at my stuff, you know, actually, you know what, they might be. And you're talking to those people, even though you can't really see them because they're staying behind the velvet rope. But, and more often than not, this is what happens with me. People message me and say, I've been following you for 18 months. I'd love you to write my website copy now. And I'm like, I've never even heard of you.
It comes out of the blue. Yeah.
Yeah, I've just been following you, and I wasn't ready to make a move, and I don't really want to engage in public because maybe my competitors will see stuff. So I've just been watching, and I'm really impressed, and now I want to work with you. So if I wasn't creating content, that guy is never going to hire me because I'm not showing up.
Right.
Yeah. So it's really important that most of your content is actually going to be consumed by people in dark mode. You know, the people who are not visible to you will be looking at your stuff.
So in other words, don't get too deflated if you don't get hundreds and thousands of responses on when you publish an article, because most people are probably reading it and just not doing anything about it.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And you know, I've been to, back in the day when in-person events were a thing, you know, I've met loads of people who say, oh yeah, I read your stuff all the time. I'm like, who are you? I've never heard of you. Thank you, but I've never heard of you. And it's because of those proportions. You know, it's about 90%, 9%, 1%. You know, 90% lurkers, about 9% contributors, the visible people, 1% the people creating stuff regularly. So
Great stuff.
Yeah.
Okay, right. Second part of the surgery here is profiles. And before we start, I've got one word to say to you, John: pineapple.
You're giving away my secrets there.
We'll come on to that in a minute, but it's a great trick, and I thought to myself, well, you know, that is definitely something to. That's a great takeaway. But so let's look at our shop window, our profile.
Yeah.
So now I asked you to have a quick look over my profile, and the sort of top line. You know, how bad is it, Doc?
It's not too bad, you know. You've got I think that the most important, and I'm looking at it again now while I speak to you, the most important bit of text to get right on your profile is your headline. And the reason is because that is the only bit of text that follows you all around LinkedIn, with the exception of your name, which you're probably not going to change. And so it's really important to get your headline right. And I think in your case, your headline is quite short, and therefore it has the potential to add some more, to beef it up and be a bit clearer on explaining what value it is that you provide. So your headline at the moment is host at the Fuel podcast, MD, the Advertist, probably thinking about bacon. I like that. And then you've got the Unicode characters for K and S. Okay, so from that, like I said, first of all, it's a bit short. You've got a maximum allocation of 220 characters.
Oh, wow. Okay.
The old limit used to be 120 characters. You're not even touching 120 there.
Right.
I recommend for my clients right now aiming for something between 120 and 150 characters, because that is a balance between getting enough information in there to actually tell your story, but also not producing something that looks like a wall of text on mobile. Because
where does that show up? Where do people see that?
Well, your headline is shown anytime that you make a post or that you make a comment or that you send a direct message. It's at the top of the screen there.
Right.
So if you're making a post or you're making a comment, and let's say someone is looking at LinkedIn on mobile, which is 60% of all sessions are on mobile now.
Wow, I did not know that.
Yeah. So let's say that you're doing that. Now, only the first 40 characters of your headline are going to be shown because the mobile is quite narrow.
Sure.
Even on desktop, only the first 70 characters are shown. And so you need to hook people in those first 40 characters. You need to think of 40 characters as being the headline that everyone sees. And people will only see the rest of it if they're engaged enough to click through to see what you're all about. So a common mistake that people make is that they start their headline with something like helping busy business owners to ... and you've run out of space then.
Right.
And you think, well, everyone's helping someone to do something, so that you haven't told me anything. So you need to make sure that the first part of the headline is what I call a content DNA statement. It's got to be interesting. It shows what you do, but ideally in an interesting fashion. And then you can move on to using keywords, the kind of stuff that people would search for to find you. And then finally, you end with what I call an intriguing section or a bravery badge, which is where you talk about something that's like a conversation starter, something that's a bit unusual. I mean, you've got the bacon thing like that. That's lovely. I've got not a douche canoe on mine, which
I love. That's fantastic.
Yeah,
It's like, what the hell is that?
So some people laugh at that. Other people go, what does that actually mean? And some people are probably turned off completely, which is brilliant, because it means I don't need to waste my time or their time by talking to them, because I'm not their person. But the people who ask about it, I've got a chance to start a conversation and then talk to them and say, well, it's actually related to one of the chapters of my book.
Right.
So actually conversation hooks are really important to my content on LinkedIn overall. But the headline is the most important bit of text to get right. So yours, for me, is a bit short. And other than the bacon thing I like, but out of context, obviously I know you a bit now. I don't know what the Fuel podcast is going to give me, and I don't know what the Advertist is going to give me. And so I'm left scratching my head thinking, well, what does this guy actually do? So I would try and add some keywords or clarify the description to at least tell me which vertical market you're in, what industry you serve, or what your real experience and benefit is that you give to people. Okay. Another mistake that a lot of people make, and I've been saying this so many times in the last couple of weeks, is the contact info panel, which sits just beneath your location. So your location is Indianapolis, Indiana, United States. Then I can see 500 plus connections. And below that, I can see contact info. And if I click on that, it opens up, the back of the screen just goes black. It opens up a white contact panel, and it gives me some information for connecting with you away from LinkedIn.
Right.
Now you've got your email address listed there, and I'm seeing that because I'm a first level connection of yours, which is fine. You've got your website listed, but you've done what almost everyone does, which is you've used one of the generic placeholder items for describing the website, which is you've got company website. Now, that doesn't tell me anything about what theadvertist.com is. So instead of doing that, what you can do is you edit your contact info panel and you set the category of the website to other. And when you do that, it unlocks an extra text field, and you can then put your own custom call to action in there.
Oh.
So I do this with my own website. So I'll say, you know, I'll put in brackets B2B copywriting, or buy my book, or something that's a bit more relevant, because what I want to do is get people to click through and go there.
Yes. Yeah.
But saying company website, well, that doesn't tell me anything. It's obviously it's a company website. I can tell it's, you know, so I would make that change. And also you can add your own website multiple times. So for example, I've got my main website listed and then a custom call to action. And then I've got my book page and a custom call to action, which is on the same site, but it's in a different page. And then I've got my LinkedIn course, same website, but a different page.
Yes.
And so I've listed the same website 3 times, but different
with different URLs on them
and different calls to action. And most people don't, you know, they think, oh, I'm just listing my website once. They don't think I've got loads of pages and loads of different services. Maybe I've got 3 services and I could list them all each and then say what each one is. That would be much more likely to get people to look at your content, right? So that's probably my most popular tip. I'm telling people that like 5 or 6 times a week at the moment.
Well, I hope you're paying attention, everyone, because this is gold. Fantastic.
Yeah. So that's a really popular one. I see that you've got the providing services box on your profile. Excellent, because not everyone enables that. So you've already done that. That's good. You in your about statement. Now, the important thing to get right with the about statement is that the first 3 lines are where you hook people in to read the rest of the about statement. So you must not put a space line in any of the first 3 lines, because you basically you're throwing away a line there.
Yep. Okay.
Now, I'm big on white space. I think it's a really useful thing, but not in the first 3 lines. And you've got 2 lines and then a space. So you've wasted one of your 3. So that's like a 33% chucking in, right? So that could just, fixing that could just be a bit of, you know, deleting a carriage return is what I'm saying. But what I say is the most important thing to do is to get across in those first 3 lines. It's not actually a full 3 lines. It's more like 2.5, truthfully.
Right.
What you do, who you serve, and one method of getting in touch that doesn't involve LinkedIn. Because if you think about someone who's just doing a checkup on you, maybe they want to email you and they can't be bothered to send you a connection request. They just want to go, well, what's this guy's email address? So you say what you do, who you're for, contact me via email here, boom. Oh, even if they don't click through to read the rest, they've probably got everything they need. Ideally, they do click through, and then you can hit them with, okay, I've got this many years of experience in this. Here's my best client testimonial. Here's the benefits of working with me. If you're targeting analytical readers, you want to put a bullet list of, you know, Q3, you know, percentage growth, blah, 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 whatever it is that will influence those readers. And then you include something personal towards the end, if you can, to give people a view of your humanity, I would say. And make sure, very, very important, this is to write it in the first person. Okay, so in other words,
yes.
We're talking about I and me rather than, you know, they, or, you know, or Keith, so-and-so, blah, blah, blah. You don't want to do that. No. If you're The Rock, that's fine. You can talk in third person. If you're not The Rock,
do it in first
person, talk in the first person. And then finally round off with other forms of contact, because maybe you've got a Calendly thing to book calls in. Maybe you've got an ebook for people to download. Maybe you've got an email address or a website form for people to fill in. Why not just put those things in to give people the option? And in total, you've got 2,600 characters to play with your about statement. Now, when I write them for my clients, I tend to use about between 1,500 and 2,000 characters in total. I don't fill all the space because it can feel like War and Peace if you fill everything, but you've got a lot of space there. So you're not really using very much of that. I haven't done a character count on this, but you've certainly got more space than you are currently using.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good.
In the experience section, you've got the top item is listed as host the Fuel podcast.
Right.
but it doesn't look as though there's a company page associated with that, right? So what that means is that you get a generic kind of gray blue icon. And what that says to me is that either this is a new user or they're not aware that they can create a company page. So what I'd suggest to you is to create a company page, associate it with your logo, and then that logo appears in your experience section and at the top of the page. So you've got an extra branding hit.
Yeah.
And creating a company page is done via the work menu. So you go to work, create a company page, and truthfully, almost all of the fields are the same as your personal profile fields. So you could just do a copy and paste across. And I did a test of this, and it took me 5 minutes to set up a company page just as a test. So there's no, oh, I don't want the extra hassle of doing that. No, it's really quick. Trust me, it really is. And you get the benefit of displaying your logo if you do that. So I'd strongly recommend that you do that to give people some visual branding of what to look out for. If they're searching the podcasts app, you probably know this. Sometimes it's really hard to find podcasts. And if you can just know what thumbnail to look for, that would be really, really helpful. You've got your licenses and certifications. I actually shared that on Twitter today because you've got Blue Peter badge issued February 1978. And I thought that was absolutely fantastic. And I shared that. And if you go and look on my Twitter profile, you will see that that's had a lot of reaction. So lots of people are enjoying that today.
Oh, good.
In skills and endorsements, you've got marketing strategy, advertising, and social media marketing. And this is probably the last thing I'm going to comment on with regards to your profile. This is very important because you can have up to 50 skills on your profile, and it's a good idea to add the full complement because that instructs LinkedIn what you're actually interested in. But the top 3 skills are the most important, partly because they're all that's visible before you click the See More button.
Right.
But also because any exact keyword matches of those terms in your headline give you an added boost on the LinkedIn search engine. So in other words, let's take your first one. You've got marketing strategy. Right. If marketing strategy appears exactly like that, capitalization doesn't matter, but the exact characters like that in your headline, then anyone searching for marketing strategy will have a better chance of finding you versus your competitor.
I get you.
So that the 3 featured skills are strategically important for what you want to be discovered for. Now, you've got advertising in there. That seems pretty obvious that you do that, right?
Right.
You've also got social media marketing. Think about whether you want to feature any of those words in your headline. If you don't, maybe you're featuring the wrong skill and you need to swap it out with one of the others. And you can drag and drop these things. Whatever's in the top 3 is what's featured.
Right.
Okay. And whatever is featured really ought to align with whatever your headline is.
Wow. Well, that's great stuff, and I've obviously got quite a bit.
How's that?
Oh, that's fantastic, John. Thank you so much. I've obviously got quite a bit of homework to do after that, but that's superb. And I'm sure that listeners will probably be going through their own profiles at the same time, sort of trying to make some tweaks and stuff. But I have to say, I mean, the instructions that you give, I didn't want to do any tweaks to my my profile until you'd actually seen it and we could do this sort of show. But I will be on it, and I promise you that your words have not fallen on deaf ears. But I mean, one thing I did want to say was when I was going through your presentation there, it showed that you're on your profile that your average profile views was something like 4,500 in 90 days. Yeah. And I think I had about 193. I mean, how do you up your profile views? What's the best way to do that?
I think the very best way to up your profile views, especially if you're relatively new, is to look for posts from other people that are relevant to your industry or your ideal clients, and then comment with as much substance on each individual post as possible. And the reason is that shows your expertise and authority, but it gets you in front of a ready-made audience that you don't already have. So let's imagine a reduced test case where you've got 0 followers, right? You put out a post, no one will see it, literally no one. It's not possible for anyone to see it. You take that same insight that you were sharing that no one's going to see, and you go and find someone who's got a big following, and you put that comment on their post that's about that subject. So you need to do some searching first. And especially if you can do that when that post is quite new, where there aren't many other comments, and you go in there with impact, with authority and expertise and
Right.
all your years of experience, and all of the people who follow that person have a chance of obviously seeing that post, but also they have a chance of seeing the most authoritative comment on that post.
Right.
And those people will be in your second and third line networks to you, most probably. They might be completely out of your network, but it doesn't matter. The people who see that comment where you're writing paragraphs of detailed exposition of whatever the idea is and showing some real leadership, empathy, whatever it is, they're going to go, who the hell is that? Wow.
Right.
Click. That goes straight to your profile. And they do their due diligence on you. And before you know it, those people are wanting to connect with you. You've got a profile view there. Now, this is the really important thing, right? This is the really important thing from this podcast interview.
Right.
Your content tells, but your profile sells. Okay. So what I mean by that is putting out salesy content is a loser's game. It's terrible. People will unfollow you. They won't take you seriously. It's like, oh, unfollow. The content builds trust with people. It tells people how things really are in your business. You explain processes. You produce helpful content. You get people to look at your profile through the quality of your content and the quality of your comments on other people's content. And on your profile, you're really clear about what you do, who you're for, what services you've got, how much it costs. That's where you're selling. Right. So it stands to reason that you want to maximize your profile views, because that will correlate with people seeing your real sales message and ultimately buying from you. So getting those profile views is the most important metric to measure on LinkedIn, right? And you can do that when you've got a relatively small following by finding other people's stuff and commenting supportively. Now, you have to be a good LinkedIn citizen here. You can't just steam in and take over someone's post. You have to still honor the
original post,
the perceived intention of what the original poster was trying to do.
Sure.
But do it in a supportive, empathetic way. That shows your personal brand values. It shows your expertise in your subject matter, and it will get people who you've never heard of to go, I need this guy in my life. And a proportion of those people will become customers.
That is incredible. That's absolutely amazing. So, well, I hope you're listening, everybody, because there's a piece of gold right there. Okay, so now Pineapple. This is this thing I love. Now, you found a way to sort people that view your profile into tire kickers and prospects using a safe word.
Yes.
So,
yes.
How does that work?
Okay, so this again speaks to what I said about Douche Canoe. It's a conversation hook, right? So I thought to myself, I'm bored of receiving all of these blind or generic invitations to connect. I want to pre-qualify people and say, if you really read my about statement, I probably should pay some attention to you. So how can I do that? I can't see that they've clicked anything, because you can't click links anywhere in the profile, right? No. So I thought, well, why not just include a secret word? So I did, and I say in there, if you get this far, include this word in your invitation note, and that will, I'll pay more attention to your invitation. I chose a word that I knew that was inoffensive, right, and that wouldn't otherwise appear in an invitation note. So I know if I see that, it must be this reason. And what I found is I tested this actually quite recently. November 2020 was my experiment on this particular thing. I wanted to see what proportion of people actually used it. And believe it or not, it was only 5% of people included that word in their invitation. So in November 2020, I received, I think it was 364 invitations that month. Only 5% of them, about 18 people, used that word. So
Right.
for me, that says, right, I better pay attention to those people because they actually have read my profile. And it also says, wow, it's so easy to stand out.
Yes.
All you need to do is read someone's profile properly. And if they've done something like this, you're already top of the list with them because they can see that you've done this.
It
So,
works both
um,
ways.
so it's a really useful conversation starter.
Yes.
And the other key insight I want to give you, other than, content tells, profile sells, is that all of the real value on LinkedIn happens in the conversations, either publicly in comments, either publicly in comments or privately in direct messages. And I transact almost all of my business on LinkedIn via the good impression I've made through comments and then the excellent impression that I've made through my direct message interactions with people. So the more conversation hooks you can put into your content, something in your headline, something in your about statement, something in your content, asking people questions at the end of your posts, the more conversation starters you use, the more chance you've got of getting into a conversation with people and the more chance you have of transacting business.
Amazing. That's absolutely incredible. And I mean, the something else that I think is very, very good, and that people don't do very often, and you did to me, which I thought was great, which is the recommendations part of it. And I didn't realize that in that case, under recommendations, more is better. And I think you sort of recommend that, at the end of every job that you do, it's almost like a sort of a sort of rounding off the sale, is that people just write a recommendation for you.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And I got an advanced tip on this one, which is, it is mentioned in the course, but I'll give it to you now. When you go to recommend anyone, if you pick any profile and go to the more menu and say recommend. So
Yeah.
go to Keith's profile, go to more, click on recommend. What you'll see is that the address bar at the top of the screen will have Keith's profile URL in it, and it will add some text to the end. And that text is /detail/recommendation/write. That extra bit that's been added is true for every profile that you want to recommend. That means it's also true for your profile. So if you take that little bit of text and add it to your own profile, when you press return, it will come up as though you're trying to recommend yourself. Now, you can't actually recommend yourself, but that page, if you save that link and you put it in your email signature,
Right.
or your invoices, or you drop it into direct messages, gives people a frictionless way of getting to the screen to recommend you. And
Wow.
if that's going to save people a couple of clicks, that might be the difference between them going, oh, I'm too busy now, or
Sure.
oh, it's taking me right there. I'll just write something in the box. So do that. Go and work out what your recommendation magic URL is.
Right.
So it's your profile URL plus that extra little bit. Save it and use it wherever you can. So, I say when I issue invoices, if you liked my work, consider recommending me on LinkedIn.
I
Now
love that.
you can recommend people only if you're connected with them. So there's no point sending it to someone you're not connected with, but maybe that's all the more reason to connect with people. And generally, if you're going to work with someone, I think it's probably a good idea to connect with them on LinkedIn anyway.
Yeah.
But yeah, that has meant that I've got lots of recommendations, and that means that I appear higher up in search results because someone with 50 recommendations, all things being equal, is going to outrank someone with only 5. Okay, so recommendations are really powerful.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, the SSI, Social Selling Index. Now, this is how I know, right, that people in my industry aren't treating LinkedIn properly. Okay, because under your advice, I did check out my SSI, okay, and my profile ranks 65 out of 100,
Okay,
okay,
that's a good score.
which isn't too bad, not too shabby, but obviously could be improved.
Decent.
It's probably about what I was scoring at school in tests and as well. So I mean, nothing, nothing's really changed. But people in my industry, because it also gives you a figure of people in your industry, they're ranked at 27 out of 100.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, this basically means that a lot of people working in sales and new business have a very low SSI score, right? Now, of all people, why would salespeople have such a low score, do you think?
Well, it kind of you've got to remember that that's an average score, and so a lot of people will not be active on LinkedIn, or they'll just be watching. They won't be contributing publicly,
Right.
and their scores are going to be very low because that maybe they haven't invested in filling out every single part of their profile. Maybe they're not creating content. Maybe they're not getting into private message conversations. Maybe they're not contributing to groups. All of those things have the potential to increase your score.
Yeah.
And they're not doing those things. And an account that's not active at all, and there'll be plenty of them, they're going to score almost nothing. So that's going to drag the average down a lot. I mean, I think the score would be more representative if it were an average of all of the people who are active at least a couple of times a month, for example, because that would really push the figures up. But still, with a score of 65, you're well ahead of what that true average would be.
And even after, I mean, you've just poked several holes in it as well, which I think is incredible. So it just shows you how much work people have to do in order to to get a good LinkedIn profile. And I think that's very, very valuable stuff. So onto the third part of this, which is the content part, which I love the fact that you led off with a Kanye West quote, which is about the only thing that he's ever said that I agree with, which is don't try and sell me anything, give me the information and I'll make my own decisions.
Yep.
And well, maybe he should have applied that to his own political campaigning, but that's another story. But we had a show a few weeks ago with Vanessa Green of Green Light Content, who's a bona fide content author. And we discussed the value of truthfulness and integrity when developing content for LinkedIn and for other areas, because the whole sales business has been turned on its head, and the art of selling is pretty much down to empowering prospects with information that proves your own credibility. Which you obviously echo, which I was quite reassured with. And you broke this down into a very handy acronym called CHAIR. And
Yes.
Can you just run through the highlights of that, how that works?
So CHAIR stands for challenging, helpful, amusing, interesting, and relevant. And I came up with this model of content in the book Content DNA for the people who have not yet fully fleshed out their true personal brand values, which will ultimately inform the content that they create. So it's kind of like a holding pattern for if you don't have a really clear personal brand, use this as a safety net, because this works for everyone, right? So what I mean by this is these are the 5 content types that tend to work best in terms of engagement on LinkedIn. And let me explain, right? So challenging content is where you put up something that is going to divide the room.
Right.
Maybe it might be a controversial opinion. It's the kind of thing that's going to get people talking. It's quite divisive, and people tend to respond to that with comments. And I've already told you, comments are really powerful as an engagement accelerator. Helpful content, which is what I really specialize in, is also really good for engagement, because it's one of the 6 rules of influence. People want to reciprocate. So if you've done something to help them unsolicited by putting out a tip or explaining a process, people will want to either say thank you back to you, or they'll want to share it with other people. Right. So that's good as well. Amusing content, I try to put some humor into my stuff, but I don't try to be a comedian, but some people do really put a lot of humor into their content. That's great, because also that is quite shareable. and tends to get a lot of engagement. You won't get a lot of deep comments with amusing content, but it does get likes and shares, and those two together are going to help it travel through the network. And then finally, the last two, interesting and relevant. These are really important, actually, mostly because of what I said about the extended content footprint idea, which is you want to be known for one thing. You know, you want to occupy the memory slot that says, this is Keith and he does this, and you can tell anyone that straight away.
Right.
As opposed to, this is John and he does a bit of this and he does a bit of that, and I can't remember what else he does, but you've got no easy way of describing that person and passing on the meme of what that business value is to others.
Okay.
So keeping it interesting and keeping it relevant will help to keep people engaged and bring more of your tribe in who will want to comment on your stuff because they're interested in your seat of power. So Chair is all of those things. And if you can make sure that your content hits at least one of those high-level things, you stand a good chance of getting engagement on your posts and therefore more visibility of your posts, and therefore more people clicking through to your profile, which is where you're going to actually sell to them. So Chair is really useful guiding principle.
It's a good prism to shoot all your content through, to make basically make sure that it ticks at least one of those boxes. Yes. So that's really useful. And obviously the course that you've put together is packed full of all kinds of smart advice for copywriting and formatting. And like I said before, we don't want to give it all away, and because obviously you've got to earn a living here. But earlier this week, I noticed you said something very interesting about treating every post we make on LinkedIn as a mini blog. And I was just wondering if you could just sort of go through that, justify that for me.
Yeah, so short form posts on LinkedIn, or what you might call status updates on other platforms, can be only 1,300 characters long, which is about 200 words, 250 words max. It's not long, really. But if you treat them as though they were mini blog posts, that helps to give them the structure that they need to make sense to the reader.
Right.
And it helps with LinkedIn's search engine for understanding the content, and Google, which is now indexing some posts. So in short, what I recommend is that you start with a headline. You imagine that you're writing a headline for a really short article. That headline has to be something that is clear and engaging enough to make people want to read the whole thing. So your headline has to sell the rest of the post. And the rest of the post needs to really, tell truth based on what's in the headline. So
right. The two have to tie up, obviously.
Yeah, I mean, I say that
clickbait.
Yeah. The way I frame this when I speak to clients is that the headline invoices for the goods that are being delivered by the body, right? So if the headline invoices something it doesn't deliver, well, someone's going to be an unhappy customer there.
Gotcha.
That's what we call clickbait very often, So the headline has to be clear and sell the rest of the post. The post needs to get to the point and show clear conclusions without any fluffy stuff, right? You haven't got a lot of space, so just get to the point. And then the ending needs to be something that encourages engagement, either a question that gets comments or some kind of call to action that gets people to do stuff. Now, I prefer questions rather than direct calls to action.
I noticed that. Yeah, that's good.
Because I'd rather get more engagement and more people then looking at my profile afterwards and do my selling there than doing a bald ask for business in the content. That said, I think if you do enough helpful content, you earn the social capital that gives you the privilege to ask every now and then, I've got a new book. Here's where to buy it. Off you go. Yeah. But if you were to do that a lot, as some people do, like every post is get on my 6-week program, get on my 6-week program, then my answer is unfollow. I'm just not interested in being sold to like that all the time. So be very careful with that. But that's the basic structure. Headline that's clear, get to the point, cut out the fluff, ask a question or make a call to action. That's your mini blog post done.
Love it. That's great advice. Actually, I just realised I actually do put a question at the end of my end of our podcast,
Mhm.
every broadcast, and so stick around to the end, listeners, and you'll find out what that question is. I always put one there, so fantastic. Now the tagging. This is an interesting one for me because May King, who I just mentioned earlier, she taught me to kind of reference people in posts that I was doing. That when I do that, it kind of ups my readability because people realize that they've been tagged in something that I've said, so they go in and inquire and have a look at it and stuff like that. But I think you're not in total agreement with that. Is that right?
I'm not a big fan of tagging because, as someone who is an avid content creator and thankful to have quite a big network,
Right.
I get tagged in about 6, 7, 8 things each day. And that becomes quite tiresome for me, right? And very often when I'm tagged, I'm in a blue wall of tags and I've got to play a game of Spot the John to see, where there's so many other people tagged. And I think that's really kind of crappy practice because that person who's tagging me is just really interested in getting more engagement on their stuff. That post is not about me. If the post were tagging me and only me and was about me, like I'm been mentioned in an interview or in a video, or someone heard a podcast and really liked it and it was with Keith and John,
Yeah,
that's brilliant.
I get you.
If it's just tagging for their benefit rather than mine, I don't think that's really cool.
No,
And the other thing to bear in mind here is that recent research by another LinkedIn trainer has suggested that if you tag a lot of people in a post and fewer than 50% of them respond to that tag, then the person who made the post will be punished by the algorithm in the future. Because what it says to LinkedIn is that, oh, he's just tagging loads of people and most of them aren't responding. So let's not let him get away with that too much. Conversely, if you did, let's say you did tag 10 people and all 10 of them respond, that's a really strong signal to LinkedIn that, oh, actually, he knows what he's doing here because all of them are on board with this.
Right.
So actually mass tagging has the potential to work. I still think as a viewer, it just looks ugly to put loads of names in there. So I'm not really a fan of it. The side note to all of this, which I don't really want to have to say, but it's true, according to LinkedIn anyway, LinkedIn's own editor-in-chief just last week was in a room on Clubhouse and I was in there with him.
Right.
And he said, the best thing to do is to tag a few people per post. I was kind of had my head in my hands because I thought that's an invite for spammers, really.
It is now.
If you're doing it thoughtfully, I think it's fine, but most people don't do it thoughtfully. So what I'm really saying to you is, yes, it's okay. Be respectful to the person you're tagging. Tag people only if it's really relevant to them, and then you're all right, because they'll probably respond, in which case LinkedIn's algorithm won't smash you to bits.
Gotcha.
But if you're just doing it as a bald kind of, I just want to get loads of engagement, that's a crappy play. Don't do that.
Right. Understand. Well, there's a great distinction between the two, and I think probably you're not a million miles away from where May King was in terms of that, because she was certainly referring to it as it being a friendly invite as part of bringing somebody into a conversation or mentioning them as you're going through. So yeah, I understand that. Now, back to analytics again and view counts. What are they and why are they important?
Right, view counts. This is one of the things that almost everyone misunderstands about LinkedIn.
Yes, and I'm confused.
Okay, so when you make a post, that post will gather views, or so LinkedIn tell you.
Right.
Except that it doesn't really, because what you think of as a view means that you think someone has read my post, and that's a perfectly natural thing. Right? That's not actually what it means. A view for a post on LinkedIn means that that post loaded on that many people's machines and could have been read. Okay. So here's the example that I always use with this. Imagine that you're on your mobile, LinkedIn mobile, and you're looking at your home feed, and you're doing this, you're doing the scroll, 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 scroll,
Right.
scroll. That is loading loads of posts in your feed. And for each one, it's adding to the counter. But I haven't stopped to read any of them because I'm just scrolling.
Right.
So each one of those is gathering what is called an impression. It means
Yep.
it's loaded, but it's not really a view, except that LinkedIn calls them views.
That's the
Now,
bit
if I stop and pay attention, that's still a view, but I actually read it. But obviously not everyone's doing that. Some of them are just scrolling by.
Sure.
So when you say, oh, I've had 1,000 views, well, did you? Probably not. You probably haven't had anywhere near 1,000 views. So that's an important thing to know, is that views are actually impressions, and impressions are no guarantee that your content has been read.
So
But here's the other.
what's the indicator then? What's the magic equation for you?
Well, what I was going to say is that there's one more important point about this, which is about videos, right? So when you load a video, that video counts as a view only after it's been watched for at least 3 seconds. Okay. So that actually is a view. So to try to compare the numbers is not fair, because for text posts or image posts or document posts, you get a view just even if someone scrolls by and doesn't even notice who wrote the thing and hasn't stopped.
Yeah.
But with a video, you've got to watch it for a little bit before it counts.
Right.
Therefore, by definition, video views are going to be a lot lower, because anyone scrolling past a video, that's not going to count.
Sure.
Right. So the real engagement metric you need to think about is not the view count, but the comment count, because there's no way that someone can leave a comment by accident. Someone has actually stayed and done something. So the comments, and to some extent the likes, because of course a like can't be done by accident. You've got to actually tap a button.
Sure.
Those engagement metrics are much more representative of actually who looked at this thing than the view count, which is not really a view count.
Right. Understand. And it's interesting you mentioned the video, actually, because a few shows back I interviewed Neil Bentley, who's quite into the idea of video for LinkedIn, and he was telling me something which you reinforced later on as well, which is the idea of native video content. So something that is designed purely for LinkedIn, because its algorithm recognizes that is content designed for LinkedIn, and it's not just sucking it across from YouTube or something else like that.
Yeah, I mean, I think the algorithm's a lot kinder on external content than it ever was before, because there was a change to the algorithm around May last year, 2020, in which case external video content actually isn't penalized anywhere near as much as it used to be.
Right.
But you will get better stats in the back end for stuff that you do post natively. You can have better control over the way the captions work if you add captions to your videos, which you absolutely should do, by the way.
Yes.
The other thing I would say about video is it's really good. It doesn't have to be specific for LinkedIn, because you could easily share it on Facebook or Twitter or whatever, but it's a good idea if you can create square videos. They will perform better than landscape or portrait videos. And the reason is purely mathematical, actually, because a square video takes up, if you do the maths, a square video takes up 78% more space in the feed than a landscape video does.
Right.
And therefore...
So you're crowding out other content.
Well, yes. And the Buffer, I don't know if you've heard of them, the social media scheduling company, they've got a lovely phrase about this. They say that square videos have more thumb stopping power. So while you're scrolling, there's more opportunity to stop on a square video than there is on a landscape one,
which just shoots right past you.
Which shoots right past, or proportionally does, and therefore square video tends to get a better view count than landscape does.
It's incredible, isn't it? I mean, it's just amazing, the little nuances in sort of social media.
It's all about lots of little marginal gains here and profile, your headline, your content, your comment strategy. It's lots of little, like 5% differences, but it really adds up. If you do all of the stuff that I bang on about in the course, you're really going to be, and sorry to sound salesy about it, but you're really going to be in a better position to do LinkedIn well.
Right. I get you. Now, Just very, very quickly, and we're coming towards the sort of final furlong of this sort of thing, but thought leadership, and because a lot of our listeners are in the marketing, PR, advertising agency world,
Yeah.
and it's a common tactic, about putting, sort of ways to generate thought leadership, and you said that document posts are really good for attracting attention, so in Word or PDF and things like that. Is that
Yeah.
is that
Yes, I've analyzed my last 600 posts over the last couple of years, and document posts consistently outperform every other content type I put out there,
really?
sometimes significantly. So, my average image post might get maybe only 5,000 views per post, right? But my average document post would get 12,000 views. That's not just by accident. That's a
Wow.
significant difference. And I've got a theory about why that is the case, but that kind of is neither here nor there. My data suggests that for me, document posts work really well, and they're relatively easy to create. If you can create a Word document and export it to PDF, or if you can create a PowerPoint document and export it to PDF, that tends to look really good in a carousel, in a document post on LinkedIn, and is a way of putting out more content in the space you've got than trying to do a 1,300 character text post. So it's a really good way of getting a different type of content into people's feeds, and tends to get very, very good view counts indeed.
Well, it's something I don't do very much of, and I think that's probably something that would be very useful in the world of new business as well. So that's a great one. Okay, now into the comments section, and what is the protocol for comments? I mean, is it better to comment rather than just hitting like?
Yeah, much better, much
Right.
better. The
Okay.
best accelerant for visibility. So comment with authority, though. You can't just write 2 or 3 words. That's not going to cut it. You've got to write at least a couple of sentences, I would say. Show some consideration.
So no sort of like well said, John,
Yeah,
stuff like that. That
that's
doesn't.
you might as well just have hit the like button, because you're not actually saying anything when
Right.
you do that.
Okay. Okay. So when I make a connection, should I send a message with the request?
Yeah, every time. I personalize every invitation. I think sending blind invites is just like stuffing your business card in someone's hand and walking off. Well, they're going to not say yes, are they? I wouldn't. I wouldn't say yes.
Fantastic. Okay. LinkedIn advertising. Yes, no, maybe.
I've tested this with a budget of $340, and it got 68,000 impressions, and it led to zero business. So for me, it didn't work in that month that I was testing it. But the experts who actually know about LinkedIn advertising, they do say that if you put a lot of budget in, and we're probably talking 4 figures,
Right.
that will start to generate results. I didn't want to put that much money into it, but I think for some people it can work. For me, I'd rather do things organically. I'm a content creator. I don't need to advertise. In
Sure.
my world, I don't need to advertise. My content is my selling tool. So
The free 50 quid thing that they always advertise, probably not a good idea.
well, it's a free swing of the bat, and they don't do any kind of follow up saying, right, time for you to spend some real money. So if you just want to have some free exposure, there's no harm in it. But when I tried it, it didn't get me any results at all.
Yeah. Okay. Fine. Okay. And the last, I mean, want to end on a sort of a real good takeaway here. What is the single biggest misconception that we all make about ourselves on LinkedIn, do you think?
I think so much of content is poor, and people's approach to LinkedIn is poor, because people either think that it's just a CV site, and so you shouldn't even bother creating some content, or they just think, all right, well, it's a place to sell my stuff, so I'm just going to go and sell my stuff. And that doesn't work. You can't just, you're not going to marry someone on the first date. So it's all about the softly approach. It's the Kanye West quote,
Yeah.
you give me all the information and let me make the decisions. And you can tell who the people are that know what they're on about. They keep turning up. They keep talking about relevant stuff. They keep being helpful instead of being salesy. Those are the people in the long run will really, really win. And one other thing I'd like to say about this is that very often people who do venture into the land of creating content, they're afflicted by the curse of knowledge, and they don't know what to write about, but they forget that they're an expert in their field. No one else is. right? So some of the simple stuff that you can write about that is bloody obvious to you won't be bloody obvious to the
Right.
person who hasn't got 30 years experience in advertising and marketing or whatever. So say the simple stuff, because people will respond well to that. I've never once, in 4 years of being really active, never once has someone said to me, God, that's obvious, everyone knows that. No one says it. Very often they go, wow, that's amazing, I didn't know these things. I didn't know you could send a voice note on LinkedIn or whatever.
Yes.
So just keep that in mind.
That's great. That's a great. I think that's a really nice nice way to end that as well. So thank you very much for that, John. Now, obviously, we're into the leisure section of the interview now. So when you're not analyzing LinkedIn, and when you're not writing books, and when you're not doing, I mean, if you ever get any time, how do you relax?
Well, other than just playing with my daughter and my girlfriend's new puppy, which is fantastic.
Oh,
I'm really interested in philosophy, psychology, brain science, how the brain works, because I'm fascinated by how humans make their decisions.
right.
And so in another life, maybe I would have been a psychologist, and I just love all of that. So listening to audiobooks about how the brain works, how influence and persuasion works, and decision making, I find that area of scientific endeavor really, really fascinating. So that would be probably my hobby if I
Ooh,
would state one.
the head doctor stuff. Fantastic.
Yeah, I think that's really cool stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's good. That's good. So now I did ask you for our three popular questions. I asked them to for your feedback on that. Your Isolation Island track. Before we start, I've got to say this has gone into my top 10.
Yeah, awesome. Well, I'm very happy to hear that. What the
So
music?
explain what that is.
Yeah, so the music I chose was the Heart version of Stairway to Heaven. Everyone knows Stairway to Heaven, I think, but Heart's version was performed in front of Barack Obama and his wife, and was performed in front of Led Zeppelin. And
that's awesome.
Even better, the drummer in that performance was Jason Bonham, the son of Led Zeppelin's legendary drummer. So they had a gospel choir there, and it was at a brilliant location, the Kennedy Center. And this is just the best live performance I've ever seen. I just think it's amazing, and I never get tired of hearing it. And it's long; it's like 7 minutes long.
I don't care. I've got to say, I completely agree with you. And we watched it in the office today, and everybody just stopped and sort of had a look at it, because it's one of those things where I mean, you've got a great band with Heart, obviously, but not only did Ann Wilson knock it out of the park as far as the vocals are concerned, but that guitarist.
Yeah.
I mean, you just watch Jimmy Page looking at him, and sort of saying, and when that choir comes up right at the end, Jimmy Page, I think, turns round to the rest of them. All right, and he basically looks at Robert Plant, and I think he says, "Wow, fuck." It's like, we should have done that.
Yeah, I must have watched that video 100 times. It never tires me. It's just an incredible, incredible performance.
It's fantastic. So I'm right behind you with that. I think that's an absolutely great choice. Okay, books.
I mean, I mostly read business books rather than fiction. I love Harry Potter, but if I'm going to recommend a book, I think Known by Mark Schaefer is incredible. It's a personal branding handbook. Yep. It's he wrote the foreword for Content DNA, and he said that my book was the ideal companion to his book Known, which is probably the best compliment I've ever had, to be honest, because his book is seminal for me. It's an amazing book.
Wow, that must have been a very nice feeling to get.
Incredible.
When you get that kind of referral. And this is the interesting one, the 3 words. What 3 words? Now, obviously, you're familiar with the geographical tool, what 3 words. And so I decided that everybody must have their own 3 words. They don't have to be adjectives. They can be nouns or names or anything. So what 3 words identify you?
Okay, well, I like my alliteration, as I think I mentioned possibly earlier. So I've gone with heart, humor, and helpfulness, because I think that sums me up. I hope it does anyway. I try my best to be relentlessly helpful. That's what my whole brand is built on. And on LinkedIn more than anywhere other place. So yeah, that's what I'll submit.
Lovely. Now, as if people did need any help with this, but so if anybody loves what you're talking about, so how do they get hold of you?
The best thing to do is search my surname. You'll find my website and my LinkedIn profile. But if you do want to connect with me on LinkedIn, going back to what we talked about earlier, please, 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 first of all, use my secret word. And second of all, say, I heard you on the Fuel podcast with Keith Smith, because that grounds the discussion. I know where you've come from and I will accept you immediately.
Fantastic. Well, there we go. See, my name does get you somewhere. Listen, John, we made it. That was fantastic. What a monster of a podcast this is. But I think just because LinkedIn is one of the main channels of business right now, this has been fascinating. And I know that certainly I'm going to take your advice, and I hope that people listening to this will. I urge everyone listening to at least make a couple of changes. And with your advice, maybe we can start to turn LinkedIn into a more thriving social scene, rather than just a dull old company notice board. But thank you very much for your time, John. Very best of luck with your LinkedIn Leaders Playbook course. And we'll promote the hell out of it when it launches. And I hope that we can stay in touch and I can report back into you with some positive news on my own marketing, having made the changes that you recommended. So thank you very much, John. Thanks again. Stay safe. Have a prosperous 2021.
Good man. Thanks a lot for having me, Keith.
All
Cheers.
the best. Bye-bye.